Hello, my name is Mitchell Pearson, and in this video I want to show you how you can use our integration with Power BI to check to see if a file exists prior to processing this file. Because I come from an enterprise BI background, I know, and you probably know this as well, a lot of times when we expect a file to exist in a particular location and we know we need to process that file, a lot of times it doesn't arrive on time, it doesn't show up on time, and there's a lot of different reasons why that might happen. But one of the things that is happening with BI is more and more companies are starting to integrate Power BI specifically into their culture and into the way that they do business analytics, is we need to be able to do these kind of things that we historically have done in enterprise BI. And so one of those things is checking to see if a file exists. Previously, we really didn't have this functionality, but thanks to our integration with Power BI, we can now do this. And so that's what I'm going to show you here in this video. How can we check to see if a file exists? And then if it does exist, we're going to process it. Now, in this video, all I'm going to do is I'm simply going to wait. Check to see if the file exists. If the file does not exist, then I'm going to wait until the file, for a specified amount of time, then I'm going to check again. Then I'll wait for a specified amount of time and check again. Obviously, you can add to this code. So you could add to this code. I tried to actually set it up so that I could send an email. I couldn't get any of the built-in R packages that are designed for emails to actually work. And so I wouldn't spend a lot of time with that. I might write a record here, and I might do a previous or a future video that shows you how to insert a record into like a table in a database. And by inserting a record into a table in a database, you could then have an automated workflow that monitors that table. And every time a record is written to that table, it then automatically kicks off that workflow, either Logic Apps or Microsoft Flow, and then you just send out a basic notification through that. That would be extremely easy to set up, and you could add that to this example to make it a little bit more dynamic. But for now, what I want to do is just show you the built-in functionality that you get with R and how you can at least say, you know what, sometimes I get the file at 7 o'clock, sometimes I get it as late as 8 o'clock, and I want to start my refresh, my data refresh. I want to start it at 7 o'clock, and then if the file's not there, just wait a minute, wait 10 minutes, and then try again. And so that's what this package or this solution that I'm about to show you here in R is going to give you. All right, so the first thing I want to show you here is at the very top, I'm declaring a variable called file exist, and I'm going to give that essentially a default value of false. And I'm doing that specifically so that when we do our while loop, right, when we do that for loop there, it's going to continue to run as long as the variable equals false. So we need to give it a value of false so that the first iteration will kick off. I'm also setting up a second variable here called file name. That variable is pointing to my blogs folder and then pointing to specifically a blog I wrote on this called check if file exists. And then it's looking for a file called customersales1.csv. All right, and so that's what you see here at the top. The first two things here are going to be variables that we're declaring just to simplify the code a little bit. And then we have our while condition. And so it says, look, as long as file exist equals false, as long as that the value of file exist is false, go ahead and perform all of the steps that exist inside of this loop. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do here is on the inside of this right here, I am checking to see if the file exists. So file exists, and then I'm passing in that parameter right there, and that parameter is tied to that right there. So it's saying, look, check to see if customersales.csv file exists in that directory location that you previously specified. If it does exist, then what we're going to do is we're going to return a value of true. If it does not exist, then we're going to return a value of false. And so what we're doing with those values, as you'll notice right here, is that I'm assigning a new value to that variable file exists. So at the very beginning of the script, we hard code it with a value of false, but then inside of the loop, we're going to reassign that value. Now, a lot of times it might come up and we just reassign the value of false because the file doesn't yet exist. If the file does exist, we're going to give it a value of true. Just below that, that's really the bulk of this script. Just below that, I am doing a print. And so I'm doing the print intentionally so that you can actually see what happens. So right now, there is not a file in my directory location called customersales.csv. And so what's going to happen is it's going to print the value of file exist, and you're going to see it print every 5 seconds, false, 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 and it's going to keep printing false. you'll notice right here, and I say 5 seconds, it was a 3-second delay, but I changed it to 5 seconds just a moment ago. It's going to delay for 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, it's then going to go back up to the very top of this while loop right here, and it's going to check the variable again. If the variable equals false, it's going to go through the steps that have been contained within the while loop, which are essentially denoted by these curly brackets right here. So let me put a square around this entire thing. The curly brackets right here and right here, everything inside of that's going to continue to execute during each loop as long as file exist equals false. However, as soon as file exist no longer equals false, that while loop is going to be ended immediately, so it will no longer execute, and then it's going to move on to the next step here, which is essentially going to read the data from that CSV file, store that in a variable, and then I'm running a small command here inside of RStudio that just kind of gives me a preview of that data. All right, and this is the code that I would then copy over from RStudio to Power BI. Now, I'll show you at the end how to move that code over to Power BI, but if you've seen any of my previous videos on our integration with Power BI, then you're already familiar with that and you don't need to see that part at all. Now, let's go ahead and run this real quick. I'm going to actually highlight the entirety of this script, and then I'm going to click Run. And when I do that, you're going to see right down here at the bottom that we get a value of false. Now, I've set it up for 5 seconds, so it waits 5 seconds, it runs back through the while loop again, we get another false, and we get another false. What I want to show you now is that if we change the value of customer sales one.csv, and I want to make that value, I want to make that file appear, right? So this script is running, that file doesn't currently exist in the directory location. I want to create that file in the directory location as if somebody were uploading the file, and then that way we can go ahead and process it. And so I would expect that those values of false would change to true, and then the file would be processed as we would expect. All right, so this is what we have here. Inside of that directory location, I have a file called customer sales one, or customer sales.csv. Remember, the script was looking for customer sales one.csv. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and add a 1 to it so that it matches what it's looking for, hit enter. And it's the same as if I kind of simulated creating that file. So let's go ahead and do that real quick, and then we'll flip back. All right, and then you'll notice that it's already, because it's only on a little 5-second delay, it's already returned a value of true, and immediately after returning a value of true, it's going to end that while loop, and then it's kind of returning just a quick preview of the data that's in that file. All right, so that's how you do it. That's how you check to see if a file exists. Some very easy, very basic code here using our integration with Power BI. Now, if you haven't seen my previous videos, or if you just want to see how I'm going to do this, I'm going to actually go back up to the code here at the top. And let me go ahead and minimize this screen at the bottom here. What I want to do, and I would recommend changing this to something probably a little greater than only 5 seconds of a delay here, but I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. I'm also going to go ahead and comment out this print statement because I don't want it to print anything if I'm pulling the data into Power BI. The head down here at the bottom, the part that's kind of returning values from that variable, I also don't need that. We talked about this in previous videos as well. All I need here is this piece of code. So I'm going to copy this out. And then I'm going to bounce back over to Power BI, which I've already opened up, and I'm going to show you how to bring this data, bring this script essentially into Power BI as a data source. So let's go ahead and jump over there real quick. All right, and so I'm going to do get data. We'll go down to do more. And then when it loads all the different options here, we can go over to other, and then under other, I can grab our script right there and then click connect. That's going to give us a blank text box, right? So at the time of this recording, Microsoft has not really given us an intelligent box here that can help us out. And that's why I write all my code in advance. I write that in RStudio and I test it out before bringing it in. I'm going to go ahead and paste the code in here. And so what I'm doing is I'm running essentially the same script as we were before. I could get rid of all this kind of commented out code if I wanted to simplify things, but I'm going to leave it the way it is. And then what's going to happen here at the end is that data variable is what's going to show up in the navigator in Power BI. When I click OK, it's going to take a little bit of time for that R script to process, so we have to give that a moment to process. Remember, we still have a 5-second delay on there, so even though the file does exist, it's going to go through that initial loop of looking at that variable. It's going to wait for 5 seconds. It's going to set the value of that variable to true. Then the next time it evaluates, it's going to say, wait, it evaluates to true. This expression is no longer true. It doesn't run the while loop, and it proceeds further on down to actual processing of that file. And as you'll see here, we now get the file loaded into Power BI. And that is how you can use our integration with Power BI to check if a file exists. Like I said, what I'll try to do is see if I can't put together another video here in the future that's a little bit longer, a little bit more comprehensive on check if the file doesn't exist, and then how do we set up notification around that, and I'll decide how I want to do that. I'll probably do that by writing some information to a database or a SharePoint list or something, and then we'll kick off an automatic workflow that'll do the notification. Unfortunately, I haven't seen an easy way to do that in Power BI. I haven't seen an easy way of setting up Power BI so that it'll send out a notification. There is an easy way of writing information to a table in a database, so kind of using some of the other tools that I work with, I could see a way of automating it through that. And that's just as good a solution as anything else. All right, so thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you enjoyed it and you got something from it, and leave comments below.